Hey class, I'm going to lecture a little bit regarding chapter 2 in your textbook, the process of research in psychology, on hypothesis development. Because you have to have some prereqs to take this class, like stats and writing. I don't think hypothesis development, I don't think I'll tell you anything crazy new that you haven't heard of, but maybe I'll say something or we'll talk about something in a different way and you'll be like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. So let me share my screen with you. Slideshow. Okay, so hypothesis development. You have to develop your research question, right? Answering some question is your motivation. So some theory is an explanation of a behavior that you can actually test. It could be descriptive, where it can ask whether this behavior occurs and what this behavior's nature is. So you have some lingering research question in your heart and you want to know the answer, and you develop your thesis question out of that. So it could be correlational, where correlation does not equal causation, right? We all know that. But it does tell us if these two variables occur together. So we know when studying goes up, test scores go up. So there's a positive correlation there. We know when exercise numbers, hours per week go up, weight number goes down, right? There's a negative correlation there, or no correlation at all, right? We couldn't find a relationship, but we can't explain what the relationship is. We can't say cause. We cannot say because you're going to the gym, your weight is going down, or because you studied more, you made a better grade on that test. We could assume it, we could infer it, we could allude that that's true, but we would need to do an actual experiment to investigate cause and not just correlations. So causal experiments investigate factors that cause behaviors. We have to answer our questions with the scientific method. So your question should be as specific as possible, right? That parsimony word that we learned in the first lecture. The simplest explanation is best. We need to have the most specific question we can possibly have so that's easiest to test. You must start with a literature review, right? You're not reinventing the wheel. And so you need to go look at the previous data and the previous research and see, here's what everyone else has said so far. And based on that, I think whatever you're about to say, whatever your research question thesis is. Or replicating results. That's important to strengthen the results. So maybe you did a lit review and you found that people have found what your research question was. That's okay. You can do it and try to replicate it. Yeah, you might change something or change some variable or adjust something a little bit, but you're basically looking at the same theory or concept. And that's okay, because if it actually did work, it actually did have significance, you should be able to replicate it. So peer review allows for experts to give feedback before publication. And so you do all your research based on peer-reviewed articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. What that means is that maybe I, as a researcher, did this experiment, I computed my statistics, I analyzed it, I found this significance, and I wanted to go to a peer-reviewed journal for other students like you to then research and use for their lit reviews. And so I sent it off, and then they sent me back an email and said, hey, we looked at this, but can you change this, or can you elaborate on this, or could you show us these statistics or give us this data or whatever. And so databases, conferences, those can be really helpful for your literature review, because you can go to the APA's conference and you can just walk through the poster sessions, or at SWAPA, or even at Tarleton, right? We have the research rodeo, I think that's what we call it. Usually in January, February-ish every year, and you can go look at other students' research and be inspired and be like, oh, they used this assessment. I'm looking at anxiety. I could use that assessment. I didn't know about that one, right? Or just look in databases. So the variable is obviously a difference that can be measured or compared, right? You need to clearly identify what your variables are before you start your lit review, so you know what you're looking at. I'm looking at anxiety and depression, and I'm looking at the relationship between the two, or whatever you're looking at, but you need to have your variables clearly defined. Psych info is probably the best one that we have as psych majors. So when you go to Tarleton's website and you go to the library, you click on databases A to Z, go to P and click on psych info and search in that collection of journal articles, because that's where all the good psych research is. There's also psych tests where you could look at survey materials, like maybe you are looking at anxiety. So you want to look at psych tests and see like what different anxiety assessments are there out there that I could use maybe in my research. So you type in your keywords and then it'll look for a keyword anywhere in that article and it'll show you your results. But make sure you click peer reviewed and make sure you click full text because as a Tarleton student, right, you get access to all these databases that Tarleton pays for you as a student, but they don't pay for full text for every single one of them. So make sure you click full text or you will be frustrated when you find one you really like and you can't view it without paying the money. So the abstract can be helpful, the links, the references, the authors. So if this article that you found is it, and you're like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about, right? Well, look at their references. Look what articles they're citing. Look at their authors. Maybe those authors did other research in that area. Look at links they have, and that can help you speed up your literature review. You could also use Scopus, Google Scholar, if you're ever not a student and you still want to do research. Google Scholar is free. Also, it's just a good way to maybe get started and see what's out there. Again, everything on Google Scholar isn't free. You might get linked to an article you have to pay for, but you can find a lot for free on Google Scholar. You can find me on Google Scholar. Side fact for fun. Some other databases, they're out there. They just might not give you legitimate results. And so I would be cautious to use anything other than like PsycInfo and Google Scholar personally. Conferences post programs online. So if you click on here, this takes you to the APA's website where they had their past conventions. And so you can look at like, here's the program from Minneapolis. And you can see this program is 257 pages long. But if you have something specific you're looking at, you can search that thing specifically. Or like I can search me because I got to present there and it was really cool. And so you can see, that's not me. This is me. Renee Wallace, how essential oil usage and the need for cognition scores impact long-term memory. And you can see what divisions they're in. So mine's in division 3, right? That's the cognition division. So you could look in your division, like I'm looking at cognition. So let me see what the APA led in this last year and what kind of research is going on in the field right now. The APA is the APA, right? So if they took that research, that's like cutting edge. That's what they were about that year. And so you could look at SWAPAs, you could look at the APAs, if there's another specific conference that you're interested in, because that data makes more sense for you, you could look at that. I think I lost the PowerPoint. Okay, so what is a journal article, right? You all know what a journal article is. I'm sure you've been using them for research for a while, but it could describe a single or multiple studies that those authors did. They submit it to the journal, their choice that they're like, this journal aligns with my research really well. I think it would be a good fit for this journal. It's cataloged into a database, sent out for peer review, feedback's given. They decide if it aligns with their journal and if it needs revisions. So they'll email the authors and say, hey, we think we're going to accept your article, but we need you to revise these things. And then the journal article or the author could then revise it, send it back. They could go back and forth a while, or they could just reject it and say, no, it's not a good fit for our article. Best of luck next time. And it can take months. And so the interesting thing is when you've submitted to one article or one journal, you can't submit it anywhere else. And so if you're trying to get published before you apply for a doc program, or you're trying to get published before you have your tenure interview, once you've submitted to one, you can't submit it anywhere else until you know if they're going to take it or reject it. And if they take it, that's great. You didn't waste your time. But if you spent 3 months waiting on them to get back to you because they're all volunteers, and they finally get back to you and they reject your article, well, you just lost 3 months and now you need to start over with a different article. So authors take special care to research and make sure their journal article really is a good fit because they don't want to have wasted time submitting to someone who won't let them in. Speaking of which, I submitted mine, that information that I got to present at APA that you just saw. I submitted it here to Psychological Reports, and they sent me back this really nice, I'm letting you know that you submitted it, and it's with regret that we inform you it's not suitable for publication in our journal. Wah, wah, wah. Sad. This is probably one of the saddest emails I've ever received, and now I'm sharing it with you, the world. But it's part of the process, right? And so you then apply to another one and you submit it to another one, or you give up and decide no one's going to take your data and they don't care about it. But that's what it looks like if it's a rejection. And if it's an acceptance, then you get to look at it in PsycInfo because someone put it in a journal. What about the structure of it? So an empirical journal article always has an abstract, which is what I know all of you read first to decide if you even care about reading the article or not. It has a little blurb about the topic, the method, results, and what was learned. So it's like the movie trailer of a article. Intro section saying what we're going to contribute to the field and this is what our goal was. The method, this is exactly how it was conducted, right? This is how we conducted our experiment or our research. These are the participants we had, how many of them, males, females, this was the design. These are the materials we used. We gave them this assessment and then that assessment, and this procedure is how we did it. And that section is really important because the idea is that others could replicate our research and get the same results, right? And so that method section needs to be good enough that I could go to that journal article, see what they did and go, yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm going to do that to see if I can get replication. The results section, here's the data that we got. Here's the analysis we performed. We performed ANOVAs or MANOVAs or a t-test or Pearson's R, and then this is what we got. So it's in plain language with the stats in parentheses. Tables and figures should be organized by the most important variables first and be necessary. APA doesn't like fluff. If you made it this far in your psych degree, you know APA doesn't like fluff. So everything needs to be necessary. And then the discussion section, where you go back to your prediction, you say what was learned, and then in the future, we need to look at this. In the future, researchers should continue to look at this variable. Here were our not pros and cons. What do we call them? You know, where we say, this is what could have been adjusted. Here were maybe some shortcomings. We wish we would have had a bigger in, or we wish that it didn't happen during COVID and people had to wear masks during the study or whatever it is. If it's multiple experiments in the same article, it's kind of the same, except you have your overall introduction and you have a separate method and results section for each design, the results for each study, and then you can have the general discussion section at the end. Let's see, what about when you're using articles or book chapters, right? You could get lots of information in a single topic. Back in the olden days, you know, people doing research had to go to the libraries and actually pull out articles and journals and look through them and table of contents and stuff. So review articles are peer reviewed, but book chapters might not be. So fun fact, your textbook probably isn't peer reviewed. Doesn't mean they're not an expert in the field, doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about, but textbooks aren't peer reviewed and anyone could self-publish a textbook, but peer-reviewed journal articles are peer reviewed, so that gives it some more cred. And then you can make your hypothesis and figure out what your variables are. After you've done this lit review, here was my question. Now I need to make my specific hypothesis. It could either be theory-driven or data-driven. So if it's theory-driven, it means you're making predictions of your theory. But if it's data-driven, they found specific findings in these studies, and you're like, yeah, like I actually want to look at these results, and these are the results that I'm looking towards, not just this idea or this theory that I'm looking into. So theory-driven is a process that uses deductive reasoning to make a specific prediction, and then data-driven is the opposite, right? It uses inductive reasoning, and you can go back to our first lecture to remember the difference between inductive and deductive, top-down or specific to broad. Theory cannot be proven in a single study. If you find a significance in your one study, doesn't mean you've proven a theory, right? We would need to replicate that over and over, and then maybe you could say you have this theory. Make sure that your operational definitions really are defined, right? These are the behaviors that I'm observing and comparing, and lit reviews can help you decide what your operational definition should be as well. And that's it. So thanks for watching.